then this person, this being,
Joe protested,
really is supernatural. Supernatural schmoopernatural.
Simon grimaced.
You're still like the people in that mathematical parable about Flatland. You can only think in categories of right and left, and I'm talking about up and down. So you say supernatural. There is no supernatural. There are just more dimensions than you're accustomed to, that's all. If you were living in Flatland and I stepped out of your plane into a plane at a different angle, it would look to you as if I'd vanished into thin air. Somebody looking down from our three-dimensional viewpoint would see me going off at a tangent from you and wonder why you were acting so distressed and surprised about it. But the flash of light, it's energy transformation.
Simon explained patiently.
Look, the reason you can only think three-dimensionally is because there are only three directions in cubical space. That's why the Illuminati and some of the kids they've allowed to become partially Illuminized lately refer to ordinary science as square. The basic energy vector coordinates of universe are five-dimensional, of course, and can best be visualized in terms of the five sides of the Illuminati Pyramid of Egypt. 5 sides?
Joe objected.
It only has 4. You're ignoring the bottom. Oh, go on. Energy is always triangular, not cubical. Bucky Fuller has a line on this, by the way. He's the first one outside the Illuminati to discover it independently. The basic energy transformation we're concerned with is the one Fuller hadn't discovered yet, although he said he's looking for it. The one that ties mind into the matter-energy continuum. The pyramid is the key. You take a man in the lotus position and draw lines from his pineal gland, the third eye, as the Buddhists call it, to his 2 knees, and from each knee to the other. And this is what you get.
Simon sketched rapidly in his notepad and passed it over to Joe.
When the pineal eye opens, after fear is conquered, after your first bad trip, you can control the energy field entirely.
Simon went on.
An Irish Illuminatus of the 9th century, Scotus Ergina, put it very simply, in 5 words, of course, when he said, Omnia quia sunt, lumina sunt. All things that are lights. Einstein also put it into 5 symbols when he wrote E equals mc squared. The actual transformation doesn't require atomic reactors and all that jazz once you learn how to control the mind vectors, but it always lets off one hell of a flash, as John can tell you. Damn near blinded me and knocked me on my ass that first time in the woods.
Dillinger agreed.
But I was sure glad to know the trick. I was never afraid of being arrested after that, because I could always walk out of any jail they put me in. That's why the feds decided to kill me, you know. It was embarrassing to always find me wandering around loose again after a few days after they locked me up. You know the background to the Biograph Theater scam. They killed 3 guys in Chicago without giving them a chance to surrender because they thought I was one of them. Well, those 3 were all wanted in New York for armed robbery, so nobody criticized the cops much for that caper. But then up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, they shot 3 very respectable businessmen, and one of them went and died. And Hoover's heroes caught all sorts of crap from the newspapers. So I knew where it was at. I could never again surrender and walk away a few days later. We had to produce a body for them.
The old man looked suddenly sad.
There was one possibility that we hated to think about. But luckily, it didn't come to that. The gimmick we finally worked out was perfect. And everything really follows the 5's law?
Joe asked.
More than you can guess.
Dillinger remarked blandly.
Even when you're dealing with social fields,
Simon added.
We've run studies of cultures where the Illuminati were not in control, and they still follow Weishaupt's 5-stage pattern. Verwirrung, Zweitracht, Unordnung, Beamtenherrschaft, and Grummet. That is, chaos, discord, confusion, bureaucracy, and aftermath. America right now is between the fourth and fifth stages. Or you might say that the older generation is mostly in the Beampton hair shaft, and the younger generation is moving into Grummet rapidly.
Joe took another stiff drink and shook his head.
But why do they leave so much of it out in the open? I mean, not merely the really shocking things you told me about the Bugs Bunny cartoons, but putting the pyramid on the dollar bill where everybody sees it almost every day. Hell,
Simon said.
Look what Beethoven did when Weiss helped illuminated him. Went right home and wrote the Fifth Symphony. You know how it begins. Da-da-da-dum. Morse code for 5. The Roman numeral for 5. Right out in the open, as you say. It amuses the devil out of them to confirm their low opinion of the rest of humanity by putting things up front like that and watching how almost everybody misses it. Of course, if somebody doesn't miss something, they recruit him right away. Look at Genesis. Looks Fiat. Right on the first page. They do it all the time. The Pentagon Building, 23 Skidoo, the lyrics of rock songs like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. How obvious can you get? Melville was one of the most outrageous of the bunch. The very first sentence of Moby Dick tells you he's a disciple of Hassan Hissaber, but you can't find a single Melville scholar who's followed up that lead in spite of Ahab being a truncated anagram of Saba. He even tells you again and again, directly and indirectly, that Moby Dick and Leviathan are the same creature, and that Moby Dick is often seen at the same time in 2 different parts of the world, but not one reader in a million groks. What he's hinting at, that's a whole chapter on whiteness and why white is really more terrifying than black. All the critics miss the point. Osiris is a black god,
Joe quoted.
Right on! You're going to advance fast,
Simon said enthusiastically.
In fact, I think it's time for you to get off the verbal level and really confront your own Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Your own Lady Isis. Yeah,
Dillinger said.
The Leif Erikson is laying offshore near California right now. Hagbard's running some hashish to the students at Berkeley. He's got a new black chick in his crew who plays the Lucy role extremely well. We'll have him send her ashore for the right. I suggest that you two drive up to the Norton Lodge in Frisco, and I'll arrange for her to meet you there. I don't like dealing with Hagbard,
Simon said.
He's a right-wing nut, and so is his whole gang. He's one of the best allies we have against the Illuminati,
Dillinger said.
Besides, I want to exchange some hemp script for some of his flax script. Right now, the Mad Dog bunch won't accept anything but flax script. They think Nixon is really going to knock the bottom out of the hemp market. And you know what they do with Federal Reserve notes. Every time they get one, they burn it. Instant demorrage, they call it. Puerile,
Simon pronounced.
It'll take decades to undermine the Fed that way. Well,
Dillinger said,
those are the kinds of people we have to deal with. The jams can't do it all alone, you know. Sure,
Simon shrugged.
but it bugs me.
He stood up and put his drink on the table.
Let's go,
He said to Joe.
You're gonna be illuminized.
Dillinger accompanied them to the door and leaned close to Joe and said,
A word of advice about the right. Yes?
Dillinger lowered his voice.
Lie down on the floor and keep calm.
He said, and his old impudent grin flashed wickedly.